All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down an expert's pretty chilling analysis of how one single conflict in one part of the world could spiral into a full-blown global crisis, impacting everything, and I mean everything from the phone in your pocket to the food on your table. And boom, right out of the gate, that's the central warning from the financial expert whose work we're looking at. No mincing words here, it's a stark, clear prediction that sets the stakes about as high as they can possibly get. So you have to wonder, how is that even possible? How can one localized war put all of us, the entire planet, at risk? That's the big question, and we're going to unpack the mechanics behind that alarming claim. Well, the answer, according to this analysis, all comes down to geography. It comes down to one tiny bottleneck, a single point of failure for our entire global system. A little waterway called the Strait of Hormuz. So what is it? It's basically this narrow strip of water that connects the Persian Gulf, with all of its energy riches, to the rest of the world. You can think of it like the main artery for the global economy. A huge chunk of our modern world's lifeblood flows right through it. And here's the kicker. This is what makes it so vulnerable. At its narrowest point, the shipping lane is just 21 kilometers wide. That's it. It's an incredibly small gap, which makes it terrifyingly easy for someone to control or to shut down completely. Okay, so when you hear Persian Gulf, your brain probably jumps to one thing: oil. And you're not wrong, but that's not the whole story. The expert's analysis shows that there are actually three critical and maybe even surprising resources that all depend on safe passage through that one tiny strait. And here they are. The three pillars of our modern world, all squeezing through that one little choke point: helium, fertilizer, and energy. First up, helium. And yeah, I know you're probably thinking about party balloons, but it is so much more important than that. It is absolutely essential for making semiconductors. You know, the brains inside our phones, our computers, our cars, everything. About 30% of the entire world's supply comes from this region. You cut that off, the global tech industry just grinds to a halt. Next, fertilizer. Now, this one is a really big deal. Somewhere between 20 and 30% of all the fertilizer used on the entire planet has to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Without that steady supply, modern agriculture simply cannot produce the amount of food the world needs to survive. And this is where we circle right back to that chilling quote from the beginning. The logic is brutally simple. You lose 20% of the world's fertilizer, you lose roughly 20% of the world's food. The math, as the expert puts it, is just that simple, and that horrifying. And finally, of course, energy. The expert shows there's this almost perfect one-to-one correlation between energy use and economic growth. So if you suddenly cut off the 20% of the world's liquid natural gas that's at risk here, you could see a 5 to 10% drop in global GDP. We're not talking about a recession. That's a cliff, a massive global depression triggered basically overnight. Which leads to the most obvious question of all, right? Why on earth would anyone risk this? What could possibly motivate someone to start a conflict with such catastrophic worldwide consequences? Well, the source material lays out two very different stories. On the one hand, you have the official reason given, which was to stop an imminent nuclear threat from Iran. But the expert we're following offers a, well, let's just say a much more cynical take. He calls it a pump and dump scheme, basically manufacturing a crisis to drive oil prices through the roof for financial and political gain. And to make matters even more complicated, the expert points out that the conflict's architects might have made a huge miscalculation. They may have completely underestimated their opponent's strategy. Iran apparently anticipated a decapitation strike and had already decentralized its military into 31 independent commands, which made a quick, clean victory all but impossible. So, the situation is a dangerous stalemate. Where does it go from here? The expert lays out 5 potential endgames, and just a warning, they are all pretty intense. I mean, just look at the range of possibilities here. It's wild. On one extreme, you have the total destruction of Iran, which the expert thinks would basically require using nuclear weapons. Then there are these other devastating conventional scenarios, including the terrifying Samson Doctrine. That's the idea that if Israel faced total defeat, it would unleash its own nuclear arsenal. And then, all the way on the other side, Iran could actually come out of this with nuclear weapons of its own. So, what does the expert think is most likely to happen? Well, he actually thinks the most probable outcome is that Iran manages to disable Israel's nuclear capabilities using conventional weapons. But look at that second bar. He also rates the destruction of Gulf infrastructure as highly likely.
Yeah, that's not a comforting forecast.
But let's zoom out for a second, because when you boil it all down, this analysis isn't really about predicting the winner of a single war. The experts' real message is a much bigger warning. It's about the very system we've all built.
And here's the key takeaway. We have created this incredible, hyper-efficient global machine. But in the process of making it so efficient, we've also made it incredibly fragile. We've built in these critical vulnerabilities, these single points of failure. And according to this analysis, our whole world is basically teetering on a knife's edge because of it. And that leaves us all with one final big question to chew on. If the Strait of Hormuz is one of these weak points, hiding in plain sight this whole time, what else have we missed? What other critical single points of failure have we built into our global system, just waiting to snap?